Some bottles, a tape loop, and the Malcolm Mitchell Trio. They make a very effective combination. By the way, do you know what Malcolm Mitchell called that tune? I Came, I Saw, I Concrete. Now, in the second half of the programme, we shall demonstrate how these various techniques can produce the most effective soundtrack for a feature documentary programme. We're going to discuss a recent BBC television documentary called Giants of Steam, a programme which was written and produced by John Reed. You may have seen it. It's been transmitted twice in the last few months. But in case you didn't, I'd better explain that it deals, as the title suggests, with steam locomotives. It was a television memorial to the passing age of steam on British railways. You can imagine the sort of sounds that are called for. Steam and wheel clank, essentially. These could have been recorded in the ordinary way with a recorder at the trackside. We've had railway recording experts in the sound programme in the past to give advice and to warn about the pitfalls. Because of these pitfalls, and for artistic reasons too, the producer decided to use simulated sound, that is, to create the sounds in the studio. This involved a very close collaboration with the composer Ron Grainer. Some of his music, in fact, was based on the rhythms created in the workshop, and some of it was treated here after it had been recorded. The men who did this work were Brian Hodgson and his engineering colleague Dick Mills. Dick, why the decision to create the sounds here?
Well, there are so many shots of different engines in this film, if we use the real sounds, there wouldn't be a continuous theme throughout the programme, neither would it keep in rhythm with the music which went behind the shots of these engines. I think that's right, isn't it, Brian?
Yes, we thought we could escape the danger altogether if we used white noise to simulate the puff-puff of the engine.
So we depended upon white noise, feedback, tape loops, a keying unit and modulation. Maybe I ought to say something about our keying unit. This is a 12-channel mixer, but instead of using faders, we have piano keys to operate an electronic gate, so that just by pushing a key down, we can cue in more or less instantaneously. Modulation is rather difficult to explain without a piece of paper and a pencil, but it's just the effect of using one frequency to alter another. For instance, if we put two frequencies, one very high and one very low, into a piece of equipment called a ring modulator, the output would sound as though the high one was being switched very slowly. In our case, we put white noise into one input and a very low frequency into the other input, and this came out as a simulated puff 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 of an engine.
The first part of the job involved rhythms which would go with Ron Grainer's music. We decided we could use white noise, which sounds like steam, and for the wheel clanks, we could use some old bits of iron and an old copper water tank, which we have in the studio, and these are the basic sounds produced. Well, this isn't particularly inspiring, so we took 4 of these clanks and we cut them into a loop which sounded like this. This is still uninteresting, so we added feedback and 4 types of pink noise from the keying unit. This gave the original rhythm. 2 more rhythms were obtained by doubling the speed. And halving the speed. We now have 3 rhythms, and can obtain a further 4 by combining the double speed with the original, the double speed with the half speed, the half speed with the original, and all 3.
And if that wasn't enough, the last 4 loops were played back through our keying unit and keyed in a random fashion, and from the result 7 other loops were selected and cut. These were played to Ron Grainer, who selected 5 of them and asked that they should be speeded up or slowed down slightly to fit the bar count of the music he had in mind.
When the music session took place, the loops were taken down to the studio and played on a tape machine. The output of this machine was split. 1 half was fed to the mixing panel, coming up on a fader in the normal way, and the other half was fed direct on headphones to the conductor and the percussion player, so the orchestra was able to keep in synchronization with the loop. In certain cases, we wanted the rhythm to start first at a slower tempo and the music to join afterwards. For example, there's one sequence where they're building a tunnel. We wanted some working noises, and behind it, a feeling of approaching power.
We used the rhythm that was behind the music, made a loop of it, reversed it and gradually slowed it down. When we recorded it and played it back in the right direction, it started slow, got quicker and was at the correct speed when the music entered.
As the sequence takes about 2 minutes in the television film, we've had to cut it down for the purposes of this program. We've omitted the center part of the sequence and just left the build-up into the music.
On top of the gradually increasing tempo of the steam and clanks, we have got 1,000 men digging away.
In case you think that perhaps we've got thousands of men to come into our studio, which is very small, we recorded a few samples of these noises, the sound of digging, building noises, sounds of pickaxes. And each of these were cut into a loop, played, mixed, and recorded. From this recording, other loops were made up. So really, we were able to multiply it electronically into the work of 1,000 men. The system of speeding up the loop into the music cue can also work the other way around. You can slow down. In fact, at several points we wanted to come out of the music into a blacksmith shop or locomotive shed. By drastically slowing down the loop extremely quickly, and adding other white noise effect and various other clanks and bangs, we were able to build up an impressionistic sound picture. This is what it sounds like. Earlier, Dick talked about modulation. There are certain points where we felt that the rhythms were unsuitable for the picture. So we decided to use the modulated white noise and add another loop of clanks. Now you may find that having listened to many radio effects, this doesn't seem to mean very much. When you're working with pictures, the actual comparative levels of sound don't really matter to the same extent as the impact of the sound on the visual cut. Well, for this program, we've tried to condense the whole of our work for Giants of Steam, but you should remember that time is a very big factor in making up this sort of sound. The original loops took 3 days to make. The original loop itself took the best part of 3/4 of a day. That's the work of 2 people for 3/4 of a day. It's a slow business. So, if after listening to this program you're going to try your own radiophonics, don't be put off by the time it takes, and be prepared to use a lot of tape. We, for example, used about 26,000 feet of tape on Giants of Steam, but of course most of it can be reclaimed and used again. Naturally, we have professional facilities, but you can do this sort of work on 3 or even 2 machines, as long as you have lots of patience and a little ingenuity. After all, you have time on your side. We have to work to a deadline.
Thank you very much, Brian Hodgson and Dick Mills, for that explanation of some of the work that went into one particular documentary program. It's given a fascinating insight into the work of the Radiophonic Workshop. Very few listeners, of course, are likely to have 12-channel mixers or ring modulators in their home, but you can make tape loops. You can experiment with re-recording at varying speeds. And, as Brian Hodgson has said, you can afford to take your time over it, and time is one of the most important ingredients. Now, to close this edition of Sound, we're going to play you an extract from a stereo EP record, which is based on the music used in the television documentary we've been talking about. Ron Grainer has reorchestrated this music, working again in the closest collaboration with the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, and the EP will be issued next month by Decca, under the same title as the television program, Giants of Steam. So let's hop on the train and listen to the music.